Elon Musk and Donald Trump, two of the most powerful and polarizing figures of our time, once shared a bond that seemed unbreakable. But what began as a strategic alliance soon unraveled into a shocking tale of betrayal, power struggles, and hidden agendas. As Musk walked away from Trump's administration, the world was left wondering, what drove one of the most influential innovators of the 21st century to sever ties with the president? And could there be a darker truth lurking beneath the surface, linking Musk to controversial ideologies that could change everything we thought we knew about him? Musk, who had built his empire on innovation and disruption, began to realize that the Trump administration was more interested in maintaining the status quo than embracing the kind of bold, transformative policies Musk championed. Behind closed doors, Musk found himself involved in a series of backroom deals that made him uneasy. In these private meetings, Trump's administration often pushed for policies that prioritized immediate economic gain, particularly in industries that Musk had long criticized, like fossil fuels and mining. In exchange for political support, Musk was asked to endorse certain initiatives that seemed contrary to his core values. The pressure to support these policies increased as Trump's team made it clear that their support for Musk's ventures, such as SpaceX and Tesla, could be tied to political favors. For Musk, the situation became increasingly uncomfortable as he felt the weight of conflicting interests pulling him in opposite directions. It wasn't just policy that caused friction, it was also the growing sense that Musk was being used as a pawn in a larger political game. Trump needed Musk's influence to signal that his administration was forward-thinking on technology, but Musk realized that his involvement was more about optics than substance. As his own business empire continued to thrive, Musk began to question whether his continued association with Trump would hurt his reputation. At the same time, reports surfaced of Musk's private reservations about Trump's divisive rhetoric and handling of key national issues, further isolating him within the administration. The more Musk distanced himself, the more pressure he felt from both sides, caught between his desire to remain influential in the political sphere and his growing discomfort with the president's approach. By 2018, the tension between Elon Musk and Donald Trump reached a boiling point, largely due to their divergent views on space exploration. Musk's SpaceX had made enormous strides in the aerospace industry, with successful rocket launches and ambitious goals of colonizing Mars. Musk saw space exploration as an opportunity to unite humanity and push the boundaries of what was possible, driven by scientific discovery and innovation. For him, the future of space should be about exploration, advancing knowledge, and creating a sustainable future for Earth. His vision was deeply rooted in scientific progress and global cooperation. Trump, on the other hand, introduced the idea of a new military branch, the Space Force, which he framed as essential for America's dominance in space. The concept of militarizing space struck Musk as a misguided and counterproductive approach. He saw the creation of the Space Force not as an advancement in space exploration, but as a militaristic move that could stifle international collaboration and divert resources away from more meaningful projects. To Musk, the focus on national security and defense was a regressive step in the exploration of space, which he believed should transcend borders and politics. Publicly, Musk had been cautious in his criticisms, but behind closed doors, he was vocal about his concerns. His private comments about the Space Force were leaked, causing a stir within both the administration and the media. Musk argued that space should remain a domain for scientific and commercial progress, not a battleground for military supremacy. This stance put him at odds with Trump's vision of space as a strategic asset for American power. Despite Musk's increasing discontent, he continued to support his own projects with SpaceX, knowing that their success could help shape the future of space exploration. However, as Trump continued to champion the idea of the Space Force, Musk's frustrations deepened. The more the administration pushed for military dominance in space, the more Musk felt isolated from a vision of space that aligned with his own ideals. The growing divide between their goals was undeniable, and Musk began to realize that his collaboration with Trump was no longer tenable. What had once seemed like a partnership based on mutual admiration was now unraveling, as their visions for the future of space diverged in increasingly irreconcilable ways. the final straw in the strained relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump came in early 2019 during a pivotal moment that forced Musk to publicly sever ties with the administration. The conflict reached its peak when Trump pushed Musk to publicly endorse a controversial policy, one that Musk found deeply troubling. The policy in question was a move to roll back environmental protections for mining and energy companies, a key initiative in Trump's broader push to revitalize traditional industries. For Musk, this was an unthinkable request. Having built his empire around sustainable energy and electric vehicles, Musk was a staunch advocate for climate change, action, and renewable energy. The rollback of such protections, which would benefit the fossil fuel industry at the expense of the environment, stood in direct opposition to everything Musk believed in. Musk's refusal to support the policy was the tipping point. He had always tried to balance his position in the Trump administration with his own ethical standards, but this policy was too far removed from his values. Musk knew that supporting it would not only damage his credibility, but also undermine his entire business philosophy, which was grounded in the belief that technological innovation could lead to a cleaner, more sustainable future for the planet. The ideological rift between Musk's vision for a green future and Trump's pro-business stance on fossil fuels became impossible to ignore. In the days following this confrontation, Musk made the difficult decision to resign from Trump's advisory councils, citing irreconcilable differences in their approaches to policy. The resignation was a public acknowledgement of the widening gap between them, marking a dramatic shift in Musk's relationship with the administration. Although Musk's departure was framed as a principled stand against policies that contradicted his values, it was clear that it also represented the collapse of a political partnership that had once seemed promising. As the media covered Musk's exit, the tension between the two men became apparent, and the world began to question whether Musk's departure was purely about policy or if there were deeper, more complex reasons behind his decision. The break from Trump was not just a political move. It was a signal that Musk's own ambitions no longer aligned with the administration's priorities. As Elon Musk distanced himself from Donald Trump's administration, the public narrative surrounding his departure began to shift. While many viewed Musk's resignation from the advisory councils as a principled stand against the Trump administration's policies, others began to question whether there was more to the story. In the wake of his departure, rumors and allegations started to swirl about Musk's associations with individuals and groups that held controversial, even extremist views. These rumors began to raise suspicions about Musk's true motivations and whether his exit was part of a much larger and more complex story than anyone had initially realized. Reports surfaced of Musk's involvement with shadowy figures in the world of politics and business, some of whom had connections to far-right movements. These individuals, although not directly linked to Musk through his public business dealings, were part of a network of influential figures with controversial reputations. Some even alleged that Musk had met with certain political extremists in private meetings, which fueled conspiracy theories about his political allegiances. Musk's critics pointed to his occasional cryptic social media posts and his comments on free speech as potential signs of deeper ties to extremist ideologies. These suspicions grew louder as Musk continued to build his companies with significant political influence, and his relationship with Trump remained a point of tension. Despite Musk's denials and public statements distancing himself from any involvement with such groups, the speculation refused to die down. The more Musk denied the allegations, the more some of his detractors began to view his denials as suspicious, interpreting his silence as proof of a hidden agenda. Investigations into Musk's past connections with certain fringe political figures became more frequent, although none of the allegations were ever definitively proven. The idea that Musk's political views might lean toward more extreme factions grew as more details emerged about his dealings with certain corporate elites whose views aligned with controversial political movements. With each new revelation, the question lingered. Was Musk's departure from the Trump administration simply the result of a policy disagreement? Or was there a more insidious reason for his exit? One that might tie him to a network of individuals and ideologies far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The most startling revelations came when a hacker, who claimed to have gained access to Elon Musk's private communications, leaked a series of documents that set the media ablaze. These documents, which Musk's team swiftly attempted to discredit, were said to contain coded language and veiled references to radical political ideologies. The hacker, who remained anonymous, alleged that Musk had been in contact with figures linked to far-right groups and extremist organizations. Although the documents were not concrete evidence of direct involvement with such groups, they were enough to spark widespread speculation and ignite a firestorm of controversy. In the leaked documents, Musk appeared to be in communication with individuals who had ties to white nationalist and nationalist populist movements. The exchanges were cryptic, often discussing political strategies, free speech, and disrupting the system in ways that raised eyebrows. While there was no direct mention of Nazi ideology, the references to certain figures and the manner in which they were discussed were enough to make many draw alarming conclusions. Some of the people involved in the discussions were known to have espoused far-right rhetoric in the past, and the nature of their conversations gave the impression of a network with deeply ideological motives. As the media pounced on the leaked material, the public was left to wonder, did Musk's departure from the Trump administration have anything to do with his alleged connections to these extremist ideologies? His defenders quickly came to his side, claiming that the leaked documents were either fabricated or misinterpreted. They insisted that Musk was simply a man of bold ideas, unconstrained by political boundaries, and that any connections were purely coincidental or exaggerated by those with an agenda. Nevertheless, the damage had been done. Even though Musk denied any association with extremist groups, the allegations lingered in the air. The investigation into his potential ties to such factions continued to grow, fueled by increasingly suspicious circumstances surrounding his departure from the Trump administration. The more Musk tried to deflect the accusations, the more the conspiracy theories about his true political leanings seemed to take root. The question remained, was Musk just another business mogul caught in the political crossfire, or was there something much darker hiding behind his rise to power? The revelations raised the chilling possibility that Musk's exit from Trump's orbit was not a simple ideological disagreement, but part of a deeper, more troubling web of influence. In response to the mounting allegations and the leaked documents, Elon Musk was forced to make a rare public statement. His team had worked hard to discredit the claims, dismissing the hackers' leaks as nothing more than a fabrication designed to tarnish Musk's reputation. But the pressure continued to build, and Musk knew that silence would only fuel further speculation. In his statement, Musk vehemently denied any involvement with extremist groups, condemning the leaked materials as baseless and manipulated. He insisted that his primary focus had always been on technological progress and the advancement of humanity, not political affiliations or controversial ideologies. Despite his denial, the damage to Musk's public image was already significant. The accusations of ties to far-right groups couldn't be easily dismissed, and they became a focal point of media coverage. Musk's supporters pointed to his long-standing commitment to environmental causes, innovation, and the future of humanity as evidence that he had no time for extremist views. They argued that the allegations were part of a smear campaign, fueled by those who saw Musk's growing influence as a threat to the status quo. However, the questions surrounding Musk's true political leanings refused to dissipate. For every vocal defender, there was an equally vocal critic questioning whether Musk's libertarian stance on free speech and his frequent cryptic comments on social media might suggest deeper sympathies with controversial factions. His refusal to unequivocally denounce certain political ideologies only heightened suspicion. The more Musk spoke, the more some felt that his answers were evasive or incomplete, leaving room for doubt. While Musk continued to expand his business empire, launching new projects and pushing forward with his goals for space exploration and electric vehicles, the allegations lingered in the background. His association with Trump, once seen as a powerful alliance, had now become a point of division. The public continued to question whether Musk's actions, his political decisions, his relationships, and his public statements were driven purely by business interests or if there was a deeper, more troubling ideology at play. The investigation into his past and his ties to controversial figures seemed to grow with every passing day, leaving Musk in an increasingly precarious position. As the controversy surrounding Elon Musk continued to escalate, it became clear that the fallout from his departure from Trump's administration would have far-reaching consequences. Public opinion was deeply divided, with some continuing to defend Musk as a visionary entrepreneur, while others saw him as a dangerous figure with potential ties to extremist ideologies. In the months following the leaks, several high-profile investigations were launched into Musk's past and his connections with political figures, both in the United States and abroad, came under intense scrutiny. Journalists and political analysts combed through Musk's social media activity, business dealings, and personal relationships, hoping to uncover evidence that might explain the true reasons behind his exit from the Trump administration. During this period, a pattern began to emerge. Musk's interactions with certain individuals, particularly in Europe and other parts of the world, began to raise alarms. Musk had cultivated a network of influential allies, some of whom had been linked to nationalist movements and right-wing populism. While these connections were not overtly political, the people Musk had surrounded himself with were often outspoken in their beliefs, advocating for policies that seemed to align with some of the ideologies Musk had publicly distanced himself from. The more that investigators uncovered, the more it appeared that Musk's relationship with Trump was merely one piece of a larger puzzle involving global political movements that sought to reshape the world order. Despite his attempts to maintain his public image as an apolitical businessman, Musk's actions began to draw more attention. His statements about free speech and the role of government regulation, while seemingly neutral on the surface, were often interpreted as signals of alignment with anti-establishment, libertarian ideologies. In one particularly controversial incident, Musk publicly supported a controversial political candidate in Europe, drawing backlash from both sides of the political spectrum. Critics accused him of using his vast influence to push a hidden agenda, while his supporters insisted that his support for the candidate was simply a personal preference, unrelated to any extremist movements. As these revelations continued to surface, Musk found himself at a crossroads. His efforts to distance himself from the allegations were increasingly ineffective, and the mounting pressure began to take its toll. The global scrutiny was relentless, and the once celebrated tech mogul found himself at the center of a political storm that threatened not only his business empire, but also his legacy. Despite his successes in business, the question remained, could Musk truly escape the shadow of these allegations? Or was he forever bound to the darker forces that seemed to be pulling at the fabric of his public persona? As the months wore on, the investigation into Elon Musk's ties to controversial political figures and ideologies only deepened, leaving his reputation hanging in the balance. Despite his best efforts to continue expanding his empire, Tesla's electric vehicles continued to break sales records. SpaceX achieved even greater milestones in space exploration. Musk's name had become synonymous with conspiracy theories and political intrigue. The allegations had taken root in the public consciousness, and even his staunchest supporters couldn't fully erase the growing cloud of suspicion surrounding him. Musk, who had once been celebrated as a genius visionary, now found himself trapped in a web of doubt. To make matters worse, the allegations of extremist connections became a focal point in discussions about his future. News outlets that once praised his innovations now featured daily reports on his political affiliations, scrutinizing every tweet, every comment, and every connection he made. Critics continued to suggest that Musk's actions, especially his decision to distance himself from Trump's administration, were merely a facade, part of a calculated attempt to position himself as a neutral player, while secretly aligning with dangerous far-right ideologies. Despite his public denials, the suspicion persisted, fueled by leaks, rumors, and the ambiguous relationships he maintained. Musk's attempts to clear his name took a more drastic turn when he decided to go on the offensive. In a highly publicized interview, he fiercely defended his principles, claiming that his focus had always been on the advancement of humanity through technology and sustainability, not politics. He decried the growing trend of cancel culture and claimed that his ideas were being misinterpreted or twisted to fit an agenda. He also emphasized his support for freedom of speech and individual liberties, presenting himself as a champion for personal rights against what he viewed as an increasingly authoritarian climate. But the damage was already done. Even with his defenses, The public couldn't easily shake the image of a man whose ambitions were now intertwined with a series of murky connections. Musk's departure from Trump's orbit, originally seen as a result of ideological disagreements, now seemed part of a larger pattern, one that suggested his ambitions and beliefs were far more complex and potentially far darker than anyone had initially understood. As the truth remained elusive, Musk's legacy, already tainted by the storm of controversy, hung in a precarious balance. Could the world ever reconcile the image of Musk as a brilliant innovator,